You know who doesn't need free swag? Sean Farnham, ESPN college basketball analyst. Farnham, thanks so much for the time. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. When you went to UCLA, so are you just branded top to bottom in all things UCLA gear? Like, do you still get, as a UCLA legend,
question.
you get tons of swag?
Question.
I'm just being honest. I've been very limited on my amount of swag in recent years. However, with the new Jordan brand deal, I'm be all over the swag for the Bruins. I already let my people know that the first J's that come out in UCLA colors, I need to have them on my feet.
See, this is why we like having guests on here, because they help us with these things. All right, we're going to play a game with you, Farnham, and that game is Contender Pretender. So we'll lay out a team for you, and you tell us whether you think they're a contender for the national championship or a pretender. Are you ready to go here?
I'm nervous, but somehow, some way, I think we're going to navigate our way through this.
All right, let's start with the number 3 team in all the land, Villanova. They played their first game in 27 days, barely beat Seton Hall, but that's a long gap. So what do you got here? Contender, pretender?
They are definitely a contender. I think when you look at this team, that long of a gap, they played Seton Hall. Seton Hall's been playing some of its best basketball this season. Jay Wright's team is loaded. This roster looks like similar rosters that have won national championships for Villanova. When you think about Colin Gillespie, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who's probably one of the more versatile scorers and offensive threats that we have in the college game, they have everything you need to be able to compete at a high level. The problem is it's almost like it's 2 seasons, because they got their season started up in Bubbleville. They played all those games, and then they had that 27-day layoff that you just talked about. There's a lot of restarting the engine, getting re-engaged, and in particular, I saw some flaws at the defensive end of the floor against Seton Hall. They'll have to fix, but they're capable of doing it.
Stick there for a second before we move on. You mentioned the gap and getting re-engaged. From a player's standpoint, what's the toughest part of getting back into rhythm when you've had a long break?
The mental edge. I mean, it's not the physical aspect, because even with the starting and stopping, you're still getting shots up. You're still doing a lot of those things. But the mental aspect of the game, being dialed in, and I think that's where it shows up at defense, because if you're not locked in for the full shot clock, the full possession, you're not fighting through screens, you're not communicating with your teammate, you can get disjointed at the defensive end and start chasing. And once the offense has you chasing, that's when things go bad.
All right, next up, number 4, Iowa, and I'm going to use a phrase that you yourself used before the show started. They did have their asses handed to them by Indiana on Thursday. So what do you think, contender or pretender?
All right, look, I responded to this email at 2 o'clock on Thursday. You know, I could have gone without the loss to Indiana. I'm going to go still contender. Here's why. Jordan Bohannon was atrocious in that game. I mean, he didn't hit a shot. Luka Garza was outstanding. And as long as you have Luka Garza on the floor and you have an offense that's capable of scoring over 90 points, which Iowa does, then they are still a contender. The light, as far as how much we're turning it on and off for contender, dims a little bit, obviously, with the loss against Indiana. But this team, and when you have a player that you can literally at any point in time, you're going, okay, we're struggling offensively, where do we go? We go to Luka Garza underneath, and we play through him, because not only is he a great scorer down low on the block, and he can create position close to the rim, they do have great shooters on the outside. They just did not shoot the ball well against Indiana, and conversely, that impacted their defense.
All right, so next up on the contender-pretender game, just because I like saying shaka smart, let's talk about Texas, a team that actually plays a little bit of defense. What do you got, contender-pretender?
Definitely a contender. I love Shaka Smart's team. Because Shaka Smart, to me, they have the great ability to score the basketball defensively. They are a dangerous team. They have one of the best defensive efficiencies in all of college basketball. Great length out on the wings. They can really stretch you. Now, the concern comes at the guard position. They have struggled at times in important moments with guard play. The best story in all of college basketball simply is Andrew Jones. His battle through cancer. He is a survivor. And then to not only see him survive, but to conquer college basketball this year. He is their leading scorer, hit the game-winning shot at West Virginia. Love everything about Shaka Smart's team and Andrew Jones. And I'm rooting for him in particular because he's not just a survivor of cancer, but he has proven that he has gotten back to where he was beforehand, which is where we thought he would be, a potential pro prospect.
Love Shaka Smart, but do not love his hair this year. It's
what?
Very odd.
Come on.
But you don't even have hair.
Maybe
How can Christine call anybody out on hair?
She needs to go outside and talk to Seth and Fonz and
Shaka
J. Bill.
is usually bald, and I feel like we had a thing going, and then he decided to grow the fro. But somebody from Texas did tag me in something this week because I was trolling Shaka a little bit, and he said fear the fro. So I was like, okay, I get it.
I don't know. I like the rhyme pattern. I like grow the fro. Like, I feel like that's powerful.
That makes sense.
Grow the
I mean,
fro.
you're either alliteration or a rhyme. Okay, so I feel like I'm the one that's talking about top 10 teams that have taken L's, but Tennessee was playing pretty well before they lost to Florida on Tuesday. So what do you think, contender or pretender?
Pretender. Defensively, they are a contender. Offensively, they are a pretender. And I think that's the big problem for this Tennessee Volunteer team. Is too often is the case, they rely so much on their defense that it wears down over the course of a contest. And we've seen them multiple times now this season struggle, whether it was with Florida this week or whether it was with Alabama. In their one matchup against Alabama that they'll have all season long, Alabama lit them up. Now, granted, Alabama's been lighting everybody up. They dropped 23 three-pointers against LSU earlier this week. But this Tennessee team, the inconsistencies at the offensive end, the lack of a go-to scorer when you need a bucket, that concerns me as far as their ability to compete and win a national championship.
All right, it is early in the history of this show, but so far I can tell you that we spent a lot of time last week praising Michigan. This week they lost. All right, so maybe we're the curse. I don't know. Farnham, Michigan, contender, pretender?
They are a contender. I love what Juwan Howard's team is all about. They've got great balance. They're one of only 2 teams in college basketball to rank inside the top 10 in offense and defensive efficiency. The other team, the team that we want swag from, Baylor. So, I mean, that's pretty good company to be part of.
Did you just put yourself in our swag battle here?
Well, look, I've heard that your co-host gets swag and you don't. At least that's what you told me. Never mind that. Hunter Dickinson is outstanding. Great size. They can play through him. He's one of the most dominant freshmen that we have in the game. And like Texas, they have great length on the wing. The question mark comes from consistency at the guard play, but I don't think there's much of a question there. This team defends. They share the ball. They're tough. They rebound. I love what Juwan Howard is building at Michigan.
All right, let's give some love to the AAC. Houston on a 5-game winning streak. They're 12-1 overall. What do you think? Contender, pretender?
Defensively, they are a contender. Offensively, not so much. Like, I love Marcus Sasser, and when he's going, he is fantastic. He's as good as really any player in the American Conference this year, which is crazy because Caleb Mills, who transferred out, was the preseason pick to be Conference Player of the Year. I love this team's defense. I love their ability to rebound. That's good enough to win them a couple of games in the NCAA tournament. But eventually, you're going to have to score the ball at an elite level. They are not consistent enough. This team is very similar to me as Tennessee. That makes them a top 10 team, an Elite 8 caliber team. I just don't see them as a Final Four national champion.
Well, it's not necessarily a great year to be a college basketball blue blood, but let's take a look at one of them next. Number 9, Kansas. Remember, they're going to be taking on Oklahoma at noon Eastern today on ESPN. So, do you see him as a title contender or pretender?
Fitzy, we're talking about the Jayhawks coming off of back-to-back losses. Inside conference play. That doesn't happen very often. But I'm still buying them. I'm still saying contender. And here's why I'm telling you. Not so fast, my friend. I feel like I'm Corso all of a sudden with game day and everything. It's awesome. All right, but hey, this is why I'm still buying them. You can fix the problems that they had. They were down 18, were playing horrible at Oklahoma State, rallied to take the lead in that game to fumble it away. Disappointing, but yet fixable. You look at the game against Baylor. They held everybody in check except for Jared Butler. Jared Butler killed them. And from the outside, there were 5 uncontested, wide-open three-point shots that he had. That's a breakdown in communication and coverages. You can fix that. Yes, they don't have Doke Azubuike underneath this year. That's a problem. He can't protect the rim. I get it. But this team is still talented enough to make a great run in the NCAA tournament. They rely a lot more on their youth than they have in recent years, and they have to shoot the ball consistently. And that's where you look at Christian Braun and just how much he's impacted this team this year, as well as Jalen Wilson, who for the first 4 weeks of the season was one of the breakout stars of college basketball.
They're 4th in the Big 12 this season, but I'll be one to tell you that the Big 12 is one of the best basketball conferences in the country.
It took 11 minutes to get Big 12 praise.
It's a tough conference to play in. All right, the last team, number 10, Wisconsin. They're 12-3 after winning 2 in a row after getting blown out by Michigan. So what do you think, contender or pretender?
Why are you focusing on the negative here? I mean, you're talking about Iowa losing to Indiana. Like, I'm a half full kind of guy. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you know what? Contender. They got blown out against Michigan. It was a wiping of the floor in that game. There's no doubt about it. But that's not who Greg Gard's team is. Greg Gard's team controls the tempo every single game. except for the Michigan game. Didn't control much that night at all. But they can play inside out. They got great versatility with their front court. It's one of the best front courts in all of college basketball. And Demetrius Trice has become a very consistent scorer from them on the outside. And I think his offensive emergence makes me believe that, especially in the NCAA tournament, where teams aren't as familiar with your style of play, not as familiar with your sets as we see in conference play, I think this is a team that's going to cause a lot of problems when we get to the NCAA tournament.
All right, so in the spirit of trying to get more swag, let's talk more about Baylor. They got the big matchup. We mentioned it earlier today. Number 2 Baylor taking on Oklahoma State. And Cade Cunningham, obviously a big part of the story. So what do you expect from the game today, Farnham?
Look, I think that this is not going to be an upset in the making. And the reason why it's not going to be an upset in the making is exactly what we were talking about as far as Michigan goes. It's balance. The other team that's in the top 10 in offense and defensive efficiency is the Baylor Bears. They do such a great job defending, and they can switch everything really 1 through 5. So they keep you out on the perimeter. They rarely give up driving lanes to the hole. And then you're talking about the backcourt in particular at the offensive end of the floor. We mentioned Jared Butler. Jared Butler is playing at an All-American level. Scott Strew's team has taken the upset of last year, the pit in their stomach. Remember, this was a team we thought could win a national championship last year, and they never got an opportunity to try to fight for it. This year, they see it as their mission. They're focused on it, and I love the way that they're attacking it. I think this is another step for Baylor. They will take a loss inside the Big 12. They will, because of how difficult the conference is. It's just not going to be today.
So one of the guys that they have to defend, Cade Cunningham, he's 6'8", averaging 18 points per game, 6.2 rebounds per game. What do you expect to see out of him today?
I expect to see what we've seen all season long, and that's the guy that could be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. He is silky smooth, guard-like skills, and you mentioned 6'8". That is scary to think about. Now, the one thing I will say is, at times, I feel like he defers too much. He doesn't have that take over the game mentality, and I would like to see him try to take over this game today. Because for them to win, he has to get north of 25 points in this game, get to 30, 35 points, and he is capable of doing it. His efficiency is off the charts, whether it's from 3 or attacking, that mid-range jump shot. He's also superb in facilitating the offense, passing to his teammates, setting up the table, and then the hustle plays. That block that he had against Kansas, where he then went out of bounds, flung it in the court. He doesn't get the assist. That's the hockey assist, but that was the best hockey assist maybe we saw all season, and a very important win for Oklahoma State. Remember now, they were put on probation and they were told they couldn't play in the NCAA tournament. There's been a stay on that. So as they gather up some wins here inside conference play, they could find their way into the NCAA tournament, which would be great for all college basketball fans to get a chance to see Cade Cunningham on the biggest stage. There's
no way we can have Sean Farnham hang out with us and not ask him about the big news in the Pac-12, obviously. Larry Scott, Pac-12 commissioners, announced that he'll be stepping down at the end of June. So I'm going to ask you to quickly give me your thoughts on Larry Scott, and also a heated question for you, Farnham. At this point, the Pac-12 seems to be teetering in some ways on the verge of irrelevance in some sports. Are they closer to Power 5 or Group of 5 at this point?
Unfortunately, Group of 5. And the reason why they're closer to Group of 5 is you look at the fact that 2 times out of the last 7 years, they've been able to get inside the college football playoffs. They are on the outside looking in more often than not. You have to be superb and over-the-top great in the Pac-12 in order to get there. I think one of the things the next commissioner has to do is change the scheduling. The scheduling is not advantageous to protect the best teams like we've seen in other conferences, in particular the SEC, to make sure that their best teams have the best chance to thrive. The Pac-12 needs to adopt that. In basketball, they haven't won a national championship since 1997. That was Arizona Simon Says championship. Miles Simon, shout out to you and the Los Angeles Lakers as you guys continue to roll. But they need to be more relevant. Power 5 rankings, Ken Palm has the Pac-12 6th right now in college basketball. Larry Scott did a lot of really good things for the conference, in particular the Olympic sports, in particular broadening the global brand of the Pac-12. The China game was very successful for the conference overall. But the problem is this, the network, you can't find it. So it's unlike a lot of these other networks that we see, like the SEC network, ACC network, Big Ten network. You can't find the Pac-12 network. The Conference of Champions is the Conference of Champions of Olympic sports, not the 2 sports that make the national headway. That needs to change with the next commissioner.
Jeez, things are tough out west. Well,
no, it's not. Have you been there? The sun is great. It's not 24 degrees. What are you talking about?
I mean,
it's great
tough.
out west.
I like the cold. No, I don't. I'm just lying. I was just trying to be a glass half full type person because you said I was glass half empty. So
I appreciate that.
Like I would give you that. Thanks so much, Fawn, for joining us.
Thanks, Fawn.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.